Hello, my name's Mark Saunders, and this is a YouTube video on the common mistakes you can make with questions when you're designing a questionnaire. And it's one of a series of YouTube videos on my YouTube channel, Mark Saunders on Research Methods. This page contains a list of different common mistakes that you can make when designing questions. But rather than go through it now, what I suggest you do is take a photograph of it on your mobile phone or take a screenshot, because we're going to actually illustrate each of these and we'll see if you can guess what each of the mistakes are. So let's start off with the first one. Here's a question: what is the kilowatt loading of this heater? Work out what the mistake is. It's a word or a concept that's unfamiliar. People are unlikely to understand or know what is meant by kilowatt loading, and so the question would need to be reworded. What's the problem with this question? Are you aware of the implications of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for small and medium-sized enterprises? And the problem with this question is that many people will lack the necessary knowledge to actually be able to answer it. So therefore, the answers are either going to be don't know, or people say they are aware even when they're not, quite often, because they don't want to look silly. How about this question? When did you leave school? The problem here is it's ambiguous. It could be referring to at what time did a child leave school, or it could be referring to when did you finish full-time education. It's too ambiguous. It needs rewording. How about this question? How many times did you access the university library web portal last week? 1 to 5 times? 5 to 10 times? Or 10 plus times? Now, look very carefully at those three groupings. If you wanted to say you accessed it 5 times, which one would you tick? Or if you wanted to say you'd accessed it 10 times, which one would you tick? The problem here is that the categories are overlapping. What about this question? Would you rather not use a non-medicated shampoo? Yes, no, or don't know. The problem here is you've got double negatives. Would you rather not use a non-medicated shampoo? It'd be much easier to ask, would you rather use a medicated shampoo? How about this question? Would you like to live in a house with a garden? Now you may think that that question's perfectly all right, but let's look in a little bit more detail and look at the context. This was asked to residents of Hong Kong, many of whom live in tower blocks. For these people, the concept would be unlikely to have been experienced, so they couldn't really answer it with any certainty because they'd never experienced living in a house with a garden. Let's look at this question, which has a drop-down list of countries to choose from. And the question is, in which country do you reside? And it's actually taken the list from the United Nations, starting with Afghanistan and working the way through, right the way down to country beginning with Z. The problem is, though, with this, that some countries aren't on there. So, for example, as you can see on this slide, Taiwan does not exist on there. And the issue then becomes the list is incomplete. So we have an incomplete list of answers. This question asks for women aged under 60 who are married, widowed or divorced. A, write the month and year of marriage. The first marriage is married more than once. And B, if the first marriage is ended by the husband's death or divorce, write the month and year when it ended. If not ended, write not ended. And then we have a box for month and a box for year. What do you think the problem with this question is? The issue is that it's unclear what to do and it's overcomplicated. When this question was actually used, the vast majority of people didn't answer it because it was so complicated and difficult to understand what to do. This question says, did you know that it is possible to have cooked meals brought to someone's home called the Meals on Wheels service, and that there is also a luncheon club open to retired people? Now you will have noticed that when I read that I made some mistakes because it was such a long question. But what I want you to think about is, what are all the possible answers? So we can look at this and think about the number of different questions there. So how many different questions can you see? 1, 2, 3, or even more? Well, the first question is, do you know that it's possible to have cooked meals brought to someone's home? The next question is, do you know that it's called the Meals on Wheels service? And the next question is about, did you know that there are luncheon clubs open to retired people? So there are at least 3 questions, so the answer could be yes to the first question, yes to the second question, and yes to the third question, or it could be yes, no, no, or no, yes, yes, and so on. So the issue with this question is that it asks more than one question in a question. Let's have a look at this question. And for this time, I want you to answer the question when I ask it. And imagine it's your tutor asking you the question. Is this the first time you have pretended to be sick? And it's a filter question, says it. If yes, go to question 11. If no, go to question 12. So if you answer the question yes, it is the first time you pretended to be sick. If you answer it no, you've obviously pretended to be sick before as well. So what we have here is an issue that the question is preventing certain answers. In other words, it's biased. This question asks, many people think there ought to be more money spent on our nation's defence. Do you think the amount of money spent on our nation's defence is inadequate, sufficient, or too much? So, what's the problem with this question? Have a think. The issue with this question is that it's biased because by putting the phrase in, many people think that there ought to be more money spent on our nation's defence, you're actually encouraging people to say that the money is inadequate. This question asks, do you currently own an electric car? Yes or no? And then it says, why? W-H-Y. There's a problem with this question. And the problem is the words or abbreviation used are unfamiliar. The abbreviation WHY could mean why do you currently own or not own an electric car? So give the reasons, but it could mean also what have you. In other words, if you do have an electric car, what sort do you have? And if you don't have an electric car, what sort of car do you have? It's not clear, and those sorts of abbreviations can be used and be very unfamiliar to people. So don't use them. This question asks, what time did you arrive at work each day last week? And please answer to the nearest 5 minutes, and then it's got space to answer for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. So it's obviously somewhere where people don't work at the weekend. But again, what's the problem with this question? The problem here is it's very difficult to actually remember that sort of level of data. And so this question is one that challenges you as the respondent and your ability to remember. It would be much better to actually record this sort of information in a diary each day. This question asks, how much did you earn last year to the nearest pound? And you've got 6 boxes, so you could earn up to £999,999. But this is not a particularly easy question to answer, so let's look at an alternative this time. Your gross annual salary in pounds up to 20,000, 20,001 to 40,000, 40,001 to 60,000, 60,001 to 80,000, and so on, with the last category being 200,001 plus pounds. So there it's a much more scrunched up, less detailed way of answering. It's categorising the data into 7 groups. But the problem with the first question is very much this. It's embarrassing because a lot of people don't like saying how much they earn, but it also requires too much detail. Very few people know to the nearest pound how much they earn each year as a gross salary. They may know how much comes into their bank account each month in terms of net pay after tax, but they don't know the gross salary. Here we have another question, and it's a question which says, I feel employees' views have influenced the decisions taken by management, and we can strongly agree, slightly agree, neither agree or disagree, So what's the problem with this question? Well, here the issue is that the categories are not reflecting. So you've got 3 chances to say you agree, 1 to sit on the fence and neither agree or disagree, and 1 to disagree. So in effect, it's biasing the responses to be in agreement rather than disagreement, with the idea that employees' views do influence the decisions taken by management. And we're going to finish by looking again at references and further reading. And we start off with Don Dillman and colleagues' book on internet, phone and mixed mode surveys, the tailored design method, which has a great deal in it about how to design individual questions. DeVallis's book, Surveys in Social Research, again talks about designing individual questions and issues with it, as does Yuxulikinch's book, Designing Research Questionnaires. Fink's book, How to Conduct Surveys, has a little bit in it as well, and my own book with Phil and Adrian, Research Methods of Business Students, in Chapter 11, we detail not only how to design questions, but we detail the main mistakes as well in one of the tables in that chapter. I hope you found this YouTube video presentation useful, and I'd be really grateful if you'd subscribe to my channel, Mark Saunders on Research Methods, and also told your friends and colleagues about the channel as well. I'm adding new videos to the channel nearly every week, and hopefully they'll be of help to you in your own research.